Listen to this, folks. Donald Trump stood up there and said he was going to make America great again. Well, instead, we're watching one of the most spectacular backfires in modern presidential history. Gas prices are exploding. Your fixed retirement checks are getting absolutely crushed every time you pull up to the pump. And now, 77% of Americans are blaming him directly. More than Biden, more than Obama, more than Bush. Even a majority of his own Republicans have turned on him. This isn't just a bad stretch, folks. This is the guy who screamed about making America great again. Now watching America turn its back on him in record numbers.
You know, the buck stops at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Donald John Trump, the President of the United States, and to a historic degree, look at this, blame for the increase in gas prices. 77% say Donald Trump. I looked back at every president that I could find on a similar question, which is when the gas prices rise, who gets the blame? Trump gets the blame more than Joe Biden did back in 2022, more than Barack Obama did in 2012, and more than George W. Bush did back in 2005, 71%. Donald Trump takes the cake. He owns this mess, according to the American people, and it is quite the mess because as gas prices climb ever higher and the increase in the percentage that blame Donald Trump climb ever higher, his approval ratings go down in the basement.
So presidents always get blamed, but he's getting blamed more.
He is getting blamed more to a historic degree.
What about the partisan breakdown here?
Now, this is where it gets really stunning. Okay, you know, we've seen numbers that are this bad for Trump, you know, disapproval rating on gas prices around this area, the percentage blaming him for the increase in gas prices around this area. But when you break it down by party, this is where it gets, oh my. You know, this is a Republican base that has been infatuated with Donald Trump for years. But even here, blame Trump for rising gas prices. 55%, a majority of Republicans blame Donald Trump for gas prices. That is the highest ever blame for gas prices from one's own party. Then you see 82% of independents. That's the highest percentage who blame the President of the United States among independents. Not much of a surprise, 95% of Democrats. But majority. Rarely do you get the trifecta of majority from across the political spectrum agreeing on something, but here we have it. The majority of Republicans, independents, and Democrats all blame Trump for higher gas prices.
And this is the highest ever from inside one's own party?
That is correct. This is the highest ever from inside one's party. When you look at the three other presidents that you have on your screen right here, that 55% that you see here, blaming the president in one's own party, that is the highest ever.
Okay, so the president says it's all worth it. It's worth it to fight this war in Iran. What do the American people say?
Yeah, okay. You know, last night as well, Rick Scott, the senator from the great state of Florida, said the same thing. It was worth it for him, despite the fact that we had the higher gas prices. But do the American people agree? They don't agree with the President of the United States, and they don't agree with the senator from the state of Florida. Look at this. Is the Iran war worth higher gas prices? 64% of Americans say no. Just a third say yes. These are types of numbers we see consistently with this war over and over and over again. We're not just getting little majorities. We are getting vast majorities agreeing on something. And here we have the vast majority say no, the Iran war is not worth higher gas prices. As I said, it is a mess, and is a mess in the minds of the American people of the president's own making.
They already say it's not worth it. They already say they don't like it. What are the prediction markets saying about where these gas prices are headed?
Yeah, okay. You think it's bad right now. The prediction market, the Calcio prediction market, thinks it's going to get even worse. Chance gas prices this year rise above $5 a gallon. Look at this, 74% chance say yes, they will. You go back to April 17, it was just 30% then. So what we've seen is this number climb ever higher. The bottom line is this: the situation is getting worse. You see it every day at the pump. And the Calcio prediction market, the people who are putting their money where their mouth is, say it will continue to get worse, most likely.
It's at $4.40 now. It's got a ways to go to get to $5, so we'll see.
We'll see, although it's climbing very quickly.
Harold Lenton, thank you very much.
Johannes, happy weekend.
All right, a lot of news. We'll be right back.
Let's be honest here, folks. This isn't just bad polling. This is historic. Even George W. Bush, at the peak of the Iraq War, didn't get blamed by his own party like this. 55% of Republicans now saying Trump is responsible for these gas prices. That's not a little crack in the base. That's a full-blown fracture running straight through the foundation. And here's what really hurts. Americans aren't just unhappy. They're not buying the it's worth it story anymore. 64% say this Iran war isn't worth the pain at the pump. Even the prediction markets are betting things are going to get worse before they get better. But Of course, Trump's doing what he always does best, doubling down and preaching to the choir. So let's go to the villages in Florida where his most loyal supporters are standing in line in the blazing heat. Will McDuffie is on the ground for MSNBC, and you're about to hear straight from the people who still believe, at least for now.
MS Now's Will McDuffie is at the villages talking to voters. Also with me, Bill Kristol, editor-at-large for The Bulwark. So, Will, what have your conversations been like with Trump supporters there?
Well, Chris, we're clearly here with part of that 34% because there's a lot of enthusiasm here. I mean, the crowd here is probably going to number in the thousands when it's all said and done. The line snaked throughout the neighborhood, people waiting in the heat. And we went up and down that line and talked to some of his staunchest supporters. And look, they understand the economic impacts of this war. They feel it themselves at the gas pump and other places, but they trust President Trump. They think that he will do good by them and end this war at some point. They believe in the war and trust that he's going to help bring prices down eventually. Let's take a listen to a couple of our conversations.
I think we're going through a little difficult time right now, but it's given the circumstances, I think it's very, very good.
Are you paying more at the pump?
Sure, but that's for a good reason.
It's a small price to pay to protect the world.
Would I like to see gas prices come down? Absolutely. I thought they would have been down more by now. I'm not blaming Trump. I'm blaming the government in general because, again, they do fight him tooth and nail and everything.
And Chris, Trump here is going to try to hammer home some of the positive economic policies that he can tout to voters, including a senior tax deduction for senior citizens that went into effect this year for the first time. He's going to try to tout that today on stage. Obviously, as you said, he's targeting the largest retirement community in the U.S. Chris.
Thanks so much for that. Appreciate it. So, Bill, look, retirement community, we know how reliable older voters are, so there's that. But obviously, you're looking at supporters. Those are the folks who live there. They voted for Donald Trump 3 times, and at least the folks who are showing up for his rally are planning to rally behind him. So if the most important thing that a president has is his time, why spend time there essentially preaching to the converted?
Yeah, I think the Villages was about 2-1 for Trump last time, but it's a pretty upper middle class retirement community. I think it's fair to say not hugely wealthy, but not people who are struggling. You know, I looked at the numbers quickly before coming on with you, and income's above average, which is unusual for retirees whose income presumably drops some, right? And households are cost $400,000. The houses cost $400,000 each. So it's a nice retirement community. That's great. They're entitled to be for Trump. Trump's entitled to go there and get them to rally. But these are not people who, are parents living paycheck to paycheck with 2 or 3 kids, driving to work maybe 30 miles each way, then driving, the other parent maybe driving the kids around to various lessons and, sports, events and so forth, right? I mean, these people are living in a planned community where they're not commuting, et cetera, to work. So I think it's a good, if you were picking a place, I'm not saying this is why they did it, but if you were picking a place where people would not have gas prices at top of mind, this would probably be it. I mean, one thing I'm struck by is Trump's line, which I think he's having some success selling to his supporters, that, this is all, we're fighting to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Obviously, administrations of both parties have been committed to that and have taken different approaches. Obama did negotiate a deal, which he hoped would slow down their progress and did for a while. There was bombing a year ago, which really crippled their progress. There's a ton of bombing a month ago that further set back their efforts. It's unclear, honestly, just from an analytical military point of view, what further, they've been set back a lot, right? And if they start to develop nuclear weapons again, we will know, and Israel will know, and they'll be vulnerable to us again. So why the war has to continue additionally after 2 months, because to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon is very unclear, honestly. And I think that's an argument that's not working very well with the majority of the American people. We know that from the polls. But final point, to your question, look, Trump's politics very much is dependent on shoring up his base. he thinks he can afford to lose a lot of those soft voters. Maybe they'll come back in the midterms or certainly by 2028. But he needs to make sure his voters, some number, the bulk of his voters stick with him. And I think that's what they're focused on. Think of all the things they're doing, the DOJ indictment of Comey, all the, keeping up the assault, the mass deportation agenda. I mean, they're not playing for the swing voters. He's reinforcing, solidifying his base.
It was interesting, though, Bill, the chair of the Republican Party of Florida, which is helping actually organize the event today, told Politico, quote, "I don't think Florida is really in place, so I don't think there is going to be much need for the president to be here." I mean, could there be some polls we don't know about that maybe suggest some leftward movement that the White House is worried about? Or is it his folks don't want to send him to another place where he might not draw a big and supportive crowd? Is there something else at play here besides shoring up his base?
Yeah, I think both those could be true.
If you know anything about Donald Trump, you know that he built his 2 presidential victories on winning voters without a college degree, while Donald Trump's base with non-college voters is absolutely collapsing. What are we talking about here? Well, why don't we just take a look? Voters without a college degree on Donald Trump. Look at this. Back in 2024, he won those voters over Kamala Harris by 14 points. You come over to this side of the screen. What's his net approval rating with him? He is underwater by 9 points. That's a 23-point switcheroo with his base of non-college voters. He is absolutely collapsing with the group of voters that helped put him into the White House, Kate.
Okay, so how are these non-college voters feeling about 2026?
Okay, so you see this drop of 23 points, right? From plus 14 Trump to now he's underwater by 9 points. How is that impacting their views on how they're going to vote for Congress? Well, you see a similar story going on here, right? Take a look. In the 2024 election, Republicans won those voters, those non-college voters, by 13 points. Now they're just ahead by just 1, 2, 3, 4 points. When you can count it on one hand, you know that you're in trouble if you're Donald John Trump and the Republican Party, in this case, the Republican Party, when it comes to the voters in Congress. And of course, a 4-point lead among non-college voters is not anywhere close to being good enough because Democrats are dominating among voters with a college degree, up by 20 points. At this point, the Democratic base with college voters is rising, and the Republican base with non-college voters is collapsing.
One thing that makes this looming loss for Trump and the Republicans in the midterm so brutal isn't just how deep it is, it's how wide. Even in 2020, when Trump lost, he still held pieces of his coalition. He didn't collapse in Florida. He kept North Carolina. He protected key Senate seats. Why? Because back then, millions of Americans, even those who couldn't stand the man, still gave him credit on the economy. They'd say, he's crazy on everything else, but at least the economy worked. That shield is gone now, completely shattered. Look at the non-college educated voters, the backbone that carried him to victory in 2024. He won them by 14 points. Today, he's underwater by 9. A staggering 2-3 point collapse with his own base. And it's not stopping at Trump. Those same voters are walking away from congressional Republicans, too. The cushion is disappearing fast. What's even worse is the psychological shift. In 2020, people could convince themselves the pain wasn't really his fault, it was the pandemic. This time, they see the direct connection. They see inflation fueled by tariffs. They see money taken from social programs and handed to billionaires. They see gas prices soaring because of a war many never wanted. They're not saying he inherited a mess. They're saying he created one. And that changes everything. All the chaos, the divisiveness, the constant drama and embarrassment on the world stage that turned people off in 2020, those are still there. But now they're multiplied by something far more lethal for any politician, the growing belief that he failed at the one thing he was supposed to be good at, the economy. If Trump loses the economy argument, he loses the working class voter. If he loses the working class voter, he loses the Rust Belt, he loses Florida, he loses North Carolina, and he loses the majorities that protect him. This isn't 2016 anymore. This isn't even 2024. This is a different America, older, wiser, tired, and fed up with the show. They're not looking for entertainment or endless fighting. They're looking for results. And when they pull up to that gas pump, fill their tank, and open their grocery bill, they're not seeing the results they were promised. That's not just a political problem, folks. That's a reality problem. And reality, as we've all learned the hard way, has a very stubborn way of winning in the end.